Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my rant on the 1994 comedy sequel, Police Academy, Mission to Moscow. This is one of the most pathetic, miserable, and unfunny sequels that I can think of. And it's a total slap in the face to whatever integrity that was left when it comes to the Police Academy franchise. It's insulting to watch, especially if you're a fan of these movies. Even if you found the last two tolerable, like 5 and 6, this is intolerable, insufferable trash. And it was only made because the producer wanted to shoot a film in Russia. It was a vanity project. It wasn't something that was made for a legitimate reason. It definitely wasn't made for money because it never got a wide theatrical release. I think the initial intent was to release it theatrically, but then Warner Brothers and the suits over there in the studio, they saw the finished product and were like, this sucks. This isn't going to make any money. And the last Police Academy film didn't do that well either. So this is going straight to video. And I've honestly seen numerous straight to video movies that were funnier than Mission to Moscow and seemed like they had higher production values. It's crazy to me that a film that was the second movie that was shot in Red Square after Red Heat and is directed by a guy, an Alan Metter, who has a pretty solid track record as a comedy director, having directed films like Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield and Moving with Richard Pryor, comes out with a product that's just so cheap and chintzy looking. It looks like it was never even intended for a theatrical release in the first place. And there's a reason for that. Because, like I said, it's the producer's vanity project. Paul Mazalanski. He's the one that had the rights to the Police Academy franchise. He had plans to do what he thought was going to be a grand finale for the series in 1991, where it would take place in England. It would deal with the Scotland Yard. And his initial plan was to have Steve Guttenberg and other cast members that were in the first film return or have cameo appearances. But that fell through. That film never got made. And instead, we get this abomination 3 years later in 1994 because he can't let the Police Academy franchise go. And then he decides to use the Police Academy franchise as an excuse to do a vanity project, which is shoot something in Russia. And he learned his lesson finally when it comes to hiring a director who has experience in directing movies and not TV shows and not just a movie or two. Like a guy who has a solid track record of directing quality comedy films, and Alan Metter. But he never gave Alan Metter the opportunity to make the film that he wanted to make, which is why the film looks as bad as it does. Why Metter himself disowned the movie. You can't blame him. He's like, I was hired to do this job. I'm a fan of the first film. That's why I agreed to do this in the first place. And then the producer comes in, sticks his nose in, and basically makes the movie. The producer wanted things to be more slapstick. I wanted to tone the slapstick down. I wanted to focus more on different things, like the differences between Russian police officers and American police officers and cultural differences, which makes sense. That's the kind of stuff that you would try to look at when it comes to a comedy in Russia. But no, Paul wanted dumb slapstick. So dumb slapstick is what we get. And that was already tired and tedious and just lame at this point in this franchise, or this point in general, because really that type of comedy was starting to age like milk. And Metter had the right idea. Metter was like, let's try to do something a little different here. And the producer wasn't having it. So if that isn't bad enough, Metter then had to deal with an unbelievably difficult shoot because he was shooting this film in Russia during the middle of a coup. There was a political coup happening where there was even an attack on the Russian president's White House of sorts. So there was even an attack that happened while they were shooting the movie. So they had to work around that. And as a result, no one was able to really find their rhythm. They weren't really able to make that cohesive or that coherent or that strong of a film. And Matter himself was never able to settle in. And even if he was never allowed the opportunity to make the film that he wanted to make. So I think at a certain point, he just sleptwalked through it. And just set up his shots, got the shots done for the day, didn't put any extra effort into it, and it shows. But unlike some other instances with other directors, there is an explanation for it, and it makes sense when you know the context of what was going on with the production of this film and why Metter has decided to disown the movie. You get it. You understand why his performance is not up to his usual par. Because even in films that were lesser received that he did in his career, like 4 years earlier in Cold Dog Soup with Randy Quaid, there's some really clever and genuinely good camera work and direction in that. Even in Working Trash with Ben Stiller and George Carlin, yes, Ben Stiller and George Carlin sharing the screen together that he did in 1990 as well. Like, even that looked pretty decent, solid. Of course, Back to School, Moving, even Girls Want to Have Fun that he did early in his career. This is a director who is very competent, very solid, knows how to make a nice looking film, and knows how to really showcase a nice style and flair to it. And that's not present here. And it's all due to the producer. And just the idea itself and just how poorly utilized things were. And also the story. Like, he was given a absolutely abhorrent script to work with. I mean, this script is horrible. I mean, you got borscht jokes. You got this whole plot involving a video game called The Game. It's so lazy that the game is literally called The Game. And then the next game that's created by this Russian mob boss to, I guess, hack into systems and stuff like that, and to take over the world, is called The New Game. So that's the level of effort you're getting when it comes to the screenplay. And this has to be like one of the worst scripts that I can think of when it comes to a sequel or a so-called comedy. It's written by Randolph Davis and Michelle S. Chodos. Randolph Davis is a co-writer on a film called Going Under, which was poorly received critically and was not at all a good comedy script. Then Michelle S. Chodos has never written a script. She never wrote a script before this, and she hasn't written a script after this. This was her one and only writing credit. So you have a bad comedy writer, and then you have a writer who never wrote a single script before. So this is a absolutely destructive and dysfunctional duo writing this movie. It's a bad idea in the first place because it's all a vanity project by the producer to shoot in Russia. So for some reason, the police academy grads, what's left of them, are going to Russia. They're hired to help this Russian general or president to stop these criminals led by this guy named Canali, who has this game called The Game. And of course, the typical sort of shenanigans ensue with Lassard and his crew. You have some new people that are brought in into the fold, and some Russian officers, as well as Cadet Kyle Connors. But this script, you literally only have 3 of the main police academy grads, plus Lassard and Harris. It was already to the point where you were starting to see things flag in terms of quality considerably, and the remaining cast members weren't enough to really carry the film or the franchise on their own. And now you get to this point and you get 3 of them. And the original plan wasn't much better because the original plan was just Hightower. So you would have had Hightower instead of Harris, but you still wouldn't have had Hooks. You still wouldn't have had, of course, Mahoney or any other recruits. Matt McCoy's character is nowhere to be found. Nick Lassard, you don't have him back. And here's the thing, too. They didn't even think about bringing Hooks back. And that's why they lost Hightower. Because the producer, yet again, so many of this film's problems fall at the feet of the producer. He didn't want to pay Hooks. He didn't want to pay the actress who played Hooks. Didn't want to pay her. Well, I don't understand why, but no, he didn't want to pay her, and apparently she was struggling financially. She really could use the paycheck, Marion Ramsey, and it got to the point where Bubba Smith was actually lending her money, and Bubba had agreed to do the movie verbally with the producer, but then when he found out that Ramsey was never asked to be in the film, he quit. In an interesting case of life imitating art, when his character Hightower quit the academy when he was standing up for Hooks in the first film. And yeah, so you don't have the bulk of the cast, the new cast members, the new recruits really don't make up for the loss of 2 of the main cast members in the Russian police officer woman and Charlie Schlatter's character. The villain's really bad. I mean, Canali is a joke, and the other commandant, the Russian commandant, isn't much better. And speaking of commandants, the writing for Lassard in particular is really, really bad. The whole running gag is that he gets into the wrong car and spends most of the movie hanging out with this Russian family. And that's it. Like, he doesn't know. He doesn't realize that this isn't a part of the mission, or these aren't the people that he's supposed to be with. He just hangs out with this Russian family and befriends them, and they do random things together. And that's it. That's all that you really have Lassard do for the majority of the script, until the ending, where, of course, because it's Lassard, he gets involved in a fight with the main villain, and Pratt follows his way to a victory. There's not a lot of material for the main cast or even the new people to work with. There's so many just bad, lazy jokes about cliched Russian things, and there's not a single laugh to be found, not even a single chuckle, not a single smirk. Too much of focus on uh, the bad guys is also present here. Some of the weaker scripts in the series have that as a common thread, where you're not focusing on the police academy grads as much. You're focusing more on the villains and whatever their dastardly plot is. But in this instance, I kind of get it because you don't have as many characters. So what are you really going to do? And there's a lot of embarrassing stuff for some of these characters to have to go through. Like Harris dresses up in a tutu and does ballet dancing. Apparently that was supposed to be Hightower. I'm honestly glad that Bubba Smith pulled out of the movie. Because I don't want to see Bubba Smith in a tutu. So yeah, it's just awful. Really bad. This is what happens when you get a bad comedy writer and a writer who's never wrote a script before write a screenplay. It's a bad idea. It's destined to fail. And the cast, I mean, what can I say about this cast? I mean, you got the leftovers of the police academy here. Michael Winslow, David Graf, Leslie Easterbook, George Gaynes, G.W. Bailey. Those are the only returning cast members from the other films. And you just tell that they're not having as much fun this time around. Their performances are more tired. They're more drawn out. Uh, some ways they just kind of go through scene to scene in this kind of haze. Um, Charlie Schlatter is seemingly recapturing his Ferris Bueller TV show performance here. Just as annoying. I don't know. I don't know why he kept thinking that that kind of annoying pissant kind of performance is something that audiences liked. He was fine in 18 again with George Burns. He was also good in a couple other things, but he just became this very one note obnoxious, like smug type of actor who you just wanted to slap in the face. Like you weren't like, oh man, this guy's so charismatic and charming. You just wanted to strangle him. You know, like when Homer strangles Bart. Like that's how you feel about Charlie Schlatter. He has that vibe about him. And Christopher Lee, he only did this as a favor to the producer, and it shows. Definitely not one of his finest hours, not one of his best performances. Ron Perlman as the villain Konali. Uh, I'll give Ron this. It does seem like he's having some fun playing the bad guy. Apparently, he looks back at this film and he's glad that he did it because he shut the Police Academy franchise down. So he's happy for doing the film just for that reason alone. And you know what? I kind of get it. I kind of understand where he's coming from. Uh, because it really was time. It was time with part 6. You could argue it was time with part 5. It was long past the time to shut this franchise down for good. And I don't think Ron Perlman himself did it. I think it's really the producer who just overstepped his bounds and just kept thinking that he could keep just pumping out the same lazy product and still get the same amount of profit. Claire Forlani is in it as Katrina, who's the female officer who forms a romance with Charlie Schlatter. She was okay. And then you have a few other actors and actresses, but there's really not much to say about it. Like there's this one guy named Vladimir Dolinsky who plays this character named a bellboy, just bellboy, and there's this whole repeated gag with him supposedly acting like he's Lassard because he's staying in Lassard's uh um not apartment, but he's staying in Lassard's room at the hotel. And anytime somebody knocks on the door, he says, "In the bathroom," or whatever. And I'm like, is that where they got the script? Did they just dig it out of the toilet? Is this script is shit? This movie is shit. This movie is from the bathroom. Like a really rank, nasty bathroom in some rundown bar in Russia. In a really bad part of town. Probably riddled with STDs and all other kinds of gross shit. The cinematography by Ian Jones, it's not incredible. It's more inept than anything else. The editing by Dennis Hill and Susan Hines. I guess it's at best just kind of okay, but not anything really that noteworthy. The film is 83 minutes, but it feels like it's 183 because you don't care about anything. You don't care about the plot. You don't care about Cadet Connors getting over his fear of heights or learning how to be a police officer. None of that matters to you. Even the original Police Academy cast, you don't really care about their whole plot lines, like Callahan trying to put a move on Connolly and get information from him. You don't care whether or not they find the floppy disk with the copy of the game so they can prevent this virus from being released that will infect all these different computers and make it so Connolly can hack into anything. You don't care about that, even though it seems like pretty high stakes, because at this point in this franchise, you just don't give as much of a shit anymore. And in large parts because they don't do anything different or new other than, okay, let's change the location. Now they're in Russia. And are you going to do anything else other than that? No. All right. I don't really care anymore. And there's an extra bit of frustration that's added on top of it because the producer just could not allow the director to make the movie he wanted to make. And he also was such a tightwad and a tight ass that he didn't want to hire cast members from the other films in the series. He didn't want to uh, give the actress who played Hooks a much needed paycheck to help her financially. He basically told her that, oh, I'm sorry, I can't write a part for you in this one, Marion. I can't do it. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't do it? Jones, the character played by Michael Winslow, was a character that was written into the film last minute because of his stand-up set that you saw back in the day, or one of the other people involved with the film saw, the casting director or whatever. Don't tell me you can't do it. You've already done that. So you could have wrote her into the script, but you wanted to be such a tight ass and a tightwad. So yeah, it's one of those things where the producer just poisoned his own franchise because of his ego and because of his unwillingness to adapt in a multitude of different ways, in terms of adapting to changing times, in terms of comedy, changing times when it comes to just the type of films in general that were being made. As a result, the last film of the series went straight to video and never even got a theatrical release, never even got a chance to flop in the box office. Instead, it flopped on home video. And it's a fitting end to me personally, because this is a deserving end for this series, this so-called baby of the producer, because he neglected it for so long. And watching the special features on the Shout Factory Blu-ray and hearing this guy bloviate and talk about how awesome it was to shoot in Russia and how he feels like it was a special moment where Gaines and Christopher Lee were there in Red Square, and he has no remorse or regrets about doing the film and everything. It just seems like he's still up his own ass after all these years. So, yeah, as you can see, not a fan of this one. Did not like this one at all. You should make it a mission to not watch this movie. Because it's not even like a so bad it's good kind of movie either. You can't like riff on it with your friends because there's not much material for you to do that. It's just a slow, depressing, pathetic slog of unfunny sight gags, pratfalls, and really bad cliched Russian jokes. I mean, look no further than the tagline for this movie: kicking butt ski, making you laugh ski. The Academy is backsy. Like, the tagline for the movie makes you groan and roll your eyes. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say about Police Academy Mission to Moscow, except this film sucks, and it's just sad that the franchise had to end on such a note. It really is. But anyway, that's my thoughts on this film. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.